This is the Mystic Girl Cult, a safe space to celebrate the journey to find your most magical self. No judgment, no hate, just stardust trying to find its shape. Get ready to be indoctrinated into the circle. Today's guest is Danielle DeBay, a transformation life coach and agent of change who focuses on helping people navigate transitions in their life. Her main goal is to inspire change through building confidence. She believes that when you're doing the things you love, you're spreading love throughout the world. And it all starts with the confidence to do what you've always dreamed of doing. Let's get right into our conversation. And so I'm here with Danielle DeBay. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Thanks for having me on, too.
Thanks for being my first recorded guest.
I'm so excited.
So am I. So, you go around promoting people to find their confidence in different ways that they're able to. How do you approach someone the first time and assess what they're doing?
So, one of the things that I really like to do, actually when if somebody is ready to actually have a call, is go through what I call the life wheel assessment.
Okay.
And basically it's where you feel like you're at in life in different areas of your life. So it'll be spiritual, career, health and fitness, all of those. There's 8 different aspects to first have an assessment of where you are at. Because if you don't know where you're at, you don't know where you're going to go. Right? Everything needs to start with.
That's true. How do you get someone to figure out where they're at? Like, for me, sometimes I feel very lost in life. And so how do you direct someone who's maybe not completely sure?
It takes questions, really. So it's, we're not really great at asking ourselves questions.
That's very true, yeah.
we get better when somebody else asks us, because then we actually have to think about it. When we ask ourselves a question, we're like, I don't know, I'm just going to disregard this question. So what I usually do is I'll ask questions and then wait. I'm going to wait until you answer me. Yeah. And you have to figure out an answer, and only you can answer that, right? I can't answer where you're at in your life.
And I've done one of your hikes before. So you take people on hikes and you assess where they're at, you give them advice, you see where they want to go, all that. So I have personal experience of you getting to the heart of the matter. One of the things that I thought was really good is that you have a very certain way of getting people to admit what they need without making them feel like they're being too exposed. So how do you kind of form that relationship experience?
That's a really good question, because I'm not sure if I have specifics on how I do that, except that I approach it with no judgment.
Yeah.
So everything is acceptable. There's nothing that's not, basically. Yeah. So I accept all of it and accept all of you for who you are, because I don't have a judgment on this is exactly what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
Especially when I don't know what it is you want to do.
You're not telling someone, this is your life.
Right. And I don't have this is the blueprint and you need to follow this exactly how it is, because I actually don't view life in that way. I actually completely throw out the blueprint, because what that means to me is really what society wants you to do.
Yeah.
Right. So it's this idea that you go
to school,
and you go to college and you get a job and you work there for 30 plus years until you decide to finally retire, and then you live life.
Yes.
Because now you have money to be able to do that.
Maybe.
And and throughout that you have kids, you buy a house, and all of those things. And
all of the things you see in every sitcom.
Right. And instead it's let's throw that out, because we don't need a blueprint for any of that. And what is it that you really want to do? And we really just get to, what do you want? And until you know what you want, there's no blueprint.
Okay.
So if you want all of those things, then great. Society has created a blueprint for you. We know what you need to do next.
But if you are feeling like that structure is not working for you, you're there to help them kind of explore.
Yeah.
And find their way and find some kind of footing to start.
Yeah, because I think, at least for me, this is how it was. For a long time, I didn't know what I want.
Yeah.
I knew things that I didn't want. And I got really good at saying, well, I don't want that. Well, I don't want that. And then I finally got to a place of, okay, I really understand who I am now. Now I know exactly what I want. Like, I had this really big epiphany, like, only 2 weeks ago, actually.
Okay.
Because I was listening to other people talk about, what they wanted to do for 2019, what goals they wanted to do. And so many people are reluctant to put down actionable, tangible steps. And what I realized is because they don't really know what they want because they don't know who they are yet.
Yeah.
And until you know who you are, then you'll figure it out and you'll be like, okay, now I know exactly what I want.
I feel like you hear that a lot at the new year where people make the generic goal of something, which isn't bad. No. Wanting to get healthy is not a bad thing. But unless you know the specifics about yourself in your life, you don't have building blocks to get you to a goal that actually will fulfill what you're looking for.
Right.
For me, doing this podcast was a thing I've wanted to do for X amount of months. I had to take however much time it took me to get the courage, get the things together to do that, to get here. And part of that was, having a discussion with you about what I want out of stuff. And part of that was realizing, I want to own my own things and be in charge of my time and do things that feel fulfilling to me.
Right.
Which is part of what I got from, our discussions on the hikes that we had and some of the follow-ups.
Yeah. A big part of, like, knowing who you are is understanding what you value. And that's what it is. So you value having your freedom and being able to be creative and to have the freedom to create.
Yeah.
And how are you able to do that if you're in a job where people are telling you exactly what you need to do and you're spending time commuting and you don't feel like you have the time or space to create the things that you want to create? Yeah. So it's understanding the things that you value. That helps you. That's one aspect of understanding who you are. Yeah. So, like, that's one of the starting points. Once you know that, you start to, like, the ball keeps rolling, and you start to figure yourself out way more.
How would you say that you built up that confidence in yourself?
Oh, this is, it's something I've actually been trying to reverse engineer for a while, and I try to think back. I think one of the things, and this is why I went into coaching and why I think it's so much more helpful, is that you need at least one person to believe in you. Yes. And I think I got that at some point without them even knowing, without them saying anything. Somehow something clicked. It was more of me seeing, like, if this person has that much courage to do this, when originally I thought, like, that's just a waste of time, right? Like, everybody wants to go do a podcast. Everyone wants to be an actor. Everyone wants to, whatever everyone wants to do. Yeah. But they have the courage to keep going, to keep trying, because that's what they're passionate about. It was sort of like this new awakening within myself of, well, I can have that. Yeah. And it's not that I need to do it the same way. It's just, why not? Why not me?
Why can't you live out what you want to do? Yeah.
And so that started with, it's really interesting, but it started with health. And I decided very suddenly, it was a very decisive decision. Yes. Like, there was no wavering on it. This is how I need to approach my health now. And it was after reading The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan. Yep. It was just like, now I know what's happening behind the scenes. I don't want to live my life that way. Again, like, I figured out what I don't want. And then I realized this is how I want it to be. So I cut out processed food and I focused only on protein and vegetables. I cut out grains as well. And within 3 months, I lost 35 to 40 pounds. I had so much more clarity on what my next steps were going to be. And it created a ripple effect of, if I can do this and I can stick to it, there are so many other things that I can do too. So it just starts with one thing. It doesn't have to be health. It doesn't have to be doing a podcast, whatever that is. It's just starting somewhere and seeing that you can follow through. And then you have the experience of, well, I did that.
And you succeeded.
And or even if you failed, you still followed through. Yeah. So now you have a reference, your own personal reference, not from someone else, that I can try, and even if I fail, I can begin again.
Did you find that there was specific resistances you had to get through, or that you had to take for yourself to get yourself there? Like when you change your diet or when you start a podcast, there are certain things that whatever has been keeping you from doing it in the first place start to rear up. How do you deal with those? So overcoming those reoccurring hurdles.
Right. So that didn't really happen with food and my health as much as it happened with becoming a coach. So once I decided to, and once I actually was like, okay, somebody told me I'm allowed to create my business. So I did. And a few weeks later, of course, like you said, things started coming up. Yeah. One of my biggest things is sales. Like I was never a salesperson. I despise sales. And it's really reframing and understanding what that really means. So what I don't like about sales is being pushy or being too assertive and trying to tell you that what I have is the only thing that's going to help you. And instead, it took a while, and it's like finally getting to the point where I'm understanding that that's not the reason why I don't like it, is because that's not who I am. I don't want people to do that to me, so I'm not going to do that to other people. But what would I appreciate also, and what would you appreciate? So you're looking for help, and I'm just trying to help you solve whatever that problem is, and I'm looking at it a different way. So the thing that I would say to do when all of those things come up is to face them. To name them. So what is this? Like,
so not like, this is Betty, she's being this kind of person, I need to overcome her.
Not yet.
Okay.
So the first thing is to say, for me it was, okay, I'm having resistance around sales. Okay, this is exactly what it is. I am having resistance to sales. Then I start asking myself questions. Why am I resistant to sales? What is it about sales that I don't like? And then understanding where that's really coming from. So what past experience really is dictating that for me? Because it's only based on something that's ever happened to us before. It's because of our frame of reference of what's occurred in our life. So once I figure that out, then I'm like, oh, well, that's just stupid. And that makes no sense.
Yeah.
And I have to unlearn this. And sometimes it takes longer because it's deep-seated. And you have to understand that it's a belief because of the experience that you had. So I have this belief that, or had this belief that being a salesman is this. This is what it is because that's what you've experienced. It feels
greasy or whatever.
Right. It's slimy for sure. It's that used car salesman vibe that nobody really wants. So instead, it's like, okay, let's really break down that belief and get rid of it because it's not mine. It was inserted somehow on either an experience I had or what media society has been basically shoving down my throat based on TV shows and telemarketing and whatever other experience. But that's not what I'm doing. So how can I reframe this? How can I say this differently? And what does this really mean for me versus what does everyone else say that sales means?
See, when I think about like the business that you're building and all the stuff that you have, it's less about what you're selling to people and more about what you're offering people. And so to me, when you put out things about your hikes or workbooks or workshops or whatever it is, you're not selling them to people, you're offering them to people. And I feel like the merit and the weight of the stuff that you're offering is worthwhile too when you put a price to it. And so it works up to that. And I understand that it's taken a lot for you to build up the like confidence of putting a weight of a number to what you're putting out.
Right.
What was like the biggest turning point to you that was just like, this is not the life I want to live? This is what I need to do for myself. Because I feel like that's what you're helping people work towards, is that point in time where you switch gears and...
Right. It happened when I was working in an office environment for an e-commerce company. And I realized what was happening was I was becoming somebody who I wasn't. So... I don't know that it was really overnight, but it might have been a series of things where it finally got to a point of, this isn't me. This does not feel good. Why am I here?
Yeah.
And then deciding that staying is way worse than me leaving because I'm not getting anything out of this anymore, and I matter more than this company, than what they might think of me. Like, nobody else is going to tell me to leave, and nobody else is going to give me
an out.
Unless I do that for myself. And it started with that, and it still took more time, but it got to a point of I started to really figure out how to love myself. So I didn't have that frame of reference. We're essentially taught at a young age that, giving is better than receiving, and if you love yourself, quote unquote, then you're narcissistic and you're conceited. Yeah. Conceited was the favorite word.
That's what a lovely, healthy feeling.
Yes. So instead of me ever learning to love myself, it was, I need to be selfless because that's when people will like me and that's when I'll be the best possible version of me. But it's not really. And I didn't learn that until a few years ago. And I think there were a series of things that I did. I couldn't pinpoint one thing, and definitely not all at once. It took time. And one of the things was right before I decided to change my eating habits. It was right before that. It was I learned to love myself enough to commit to myself.
Okay.
Which I think is part of the reason why we fail at certain things. As far as like eating habits and diet and exercise, is because we don't really love ourselves enough to make that commitment.
It's one of those things where you have, to me, it's like you have to form a relationship with yourself where you care as much about yourself as you would the closest person to you. And I've tried to explain that to people sometimes, where I do have a very strong belief that the most important relationship in your life is the relationship you have with yourself, because it's the one that's going to carry you through continuously. Yeah. And if you don't take care of that, you're not going to get anywhere, because all you're doing is making choices to hurt yourself.
Right. Or you're not really realizing that you're not putting yourself first, and you're giving up part of yourself without realizing it, because you're just like, but this person needs this and I'm being helpful and it's fine, and you don't realize that by doing that I'm giving up part of me because it's not something I really want to be doing.
Is there something that you would recommend to people to do to kind of give themselves a self-assessment if they're on that toe of thinking they might need someone to help them, or that they're ready for something, versus whether or not they're happy where they are? Kind of a checklist or something to go through to see where you're at?
I would really take into consideration the life assessment wheel. Like, you can look that up and look at the different areas of your life, and you have to rank yourself. And that's, like, I think one of the hardest things.
You can't lie.
I mean, you're just lying to yourself if you do, so you can, but what's the point then? But be honest about where you are, like on a 1 to 10 scale. Like, where are you at? Are you a 5? You're like kind of in the middle and you're towing the line? Or are you a 1 because you're not putting any attention into this one thing and you would prefer to be at a 10? Yeah. There's a big difference in here, and realistically getting to a 10 within a month isn't probably going to happen. So I really do recommend the life assessment wheel. I do that in initial sessions, the free sessions that I give, so that we can talk through it, especially if you're just like, I know I'm not going to answer honestly. I like doing that right away because I'll poke you on figuring out, on figuring out, like, is that really where you are? And why? Because if it feels like you're lying to yourself to make yourself feel better, like, that's not really going to get you anywhere. It's the same thing as, pretending like, oh, I'm fine, when inside you're raging and you just want to kill someone.
It's that, if you've ever seen it, it's that image that you can find online of the dog in the burning building. It's just it's a cartoon of this dog sitting on a chair at a table, but the room is on fire, and he's just like, I'm fine.
Exactly.
And
that's exactly
whenever
what it is.
I notice myself not valuing how I'm feeling, I just think about that dog, and I'm realizing, like, I don't want to be stuck in a burning building around me. Like, I don't want that to feel like my life.
Right. Yeah. So doing the assessment and then just being honest with yourself. So, I mean, there's other things like you can do that lead up to it, but you have to accept every part of yourself first, even the things that you decide are good or bad.
How do you recommend someone get that kind of self-awareness and that, I guess, confidence to admit this is who they are?
Okay, there's something that I actually ask almost all of my clients to do, but it's more about loving yourself first. So you start to feel yourself, love yourself, you start to accept yourself more. That's what I believe anyway. So something that I tell a lot of my clients to do is for a whole week to look in the mirror and look yourself directly in the eye and say, I love you. And it's painful as fuck.
And it's awkward as anything.
Because if you're so willing to say that, to look into somebody else's eyes and say, I love you, because you feel like they're contributing to your life and making you happier, that person should first be you. And if you're not able to do that for yourself, it's really hard to continue on and accept all of you. So you start telling yourself, I love you, you're going to start seeing like, okay, I love all parts of me. I love and accept all parts of me.
Yeah.
Even the ones that you think are bad, which again, like from my perspective, and that's why like you felt this, I don't judge the good or the bad. You're judging that based on, again, society's whatever blueprint.
You've been taught is a good thing to be or a bad thing to be.
Right.
Whether that's true or not.
Right. So it's, if you start, like it really does start with acceptance. And I think that starts when you love yourself first. So that's the one thing. It's a little radical. People hate it. The first time I did it, I bawled my eyes out because I was just like, what the hell is this? I've never experienced this before. How can I expect somebody else to tell me this when I'm barely willing to do this for myself? And then now I love this. I've gotten to a place where, like I have a small bathroom, but I'll go to the bathroom and then I wash my hands and the mirror's right there. And I'll look at myself and every once in a while, like give myself a wink. And I just I just tell myself, oh, you're gorgeous, babe. And just random things like that.
You take time to acknowledge the things that you're loving about yourself.
Yeah.
And just acknowledging the love you have.
And there's nothing specific at that point, too. I'm not, like, looking at my hair or my face or any external looks or anything. I'm just like, you're just amazing.
See, that shouldn't feel like a revelation.
It really shouldn't. And it shouldn't be considered conceited or narcissistic because
it's not.
How do you, like, I really, really wonder, how do you expect me to love you if I don't know how to love myself? I can't spread love I don't already have.
Yes.
Right? It's you've heard this saying before, like you can't pour from an empty cup. Well, love is the same thing. If I don't love myself, I will never be able to love you because I'm looking for something that's in you that's not even within me. So it really goes back to that.
And it's also, you're trying to fill something in yourself that no one else can fill.
Right.
It's one of those things where, like, I've heard you talk about stuff like this before. You hear it everywhere, but it hits every time that that kind of care for yourself. And I guess one way of saying it is loving yourself, being careful with yourself, and how it is just, it's crazy to think that as a society we don't prioritize that more. I feel like it's starting to become more of a theme and a trend.
Right.
But why do you think that the world seems so, or has seemed so hell-bent on not letting you care about yourself?
I don't know. I think that's such a big question.
I know. Sorry.
Like why the world doesn't want us to love ourselves? Because it's easier to live in fear.
Yeah.
So that you can be controlled. I mean, like, I don't know. We can go into like conspiracy theories and stuff, but to be honest, I think a big piece of it is we do focus on controlling others. You know, even in a relationship, we think, I'll be with this person and they need to live they'll get love based on how well they
perform to your standards.
Right, exactly. And that's conditional love,
yeah.
which if I feel like I'm falling into that, I really try to take a step back, because then I'm not accepting somebody. And it really takes full acceptance to have love for someone also. With still a hope and a desire for somebody to change the things that are detrimental to them, not because you think that they need to be the way that you want them to be.
I think examining the way that you love people and how those relationships work is a really good example of seeing how you are treating the things that you love and how you would treat yourself. Like, if you're accepting things in people because you're like, I love you for who you are, this is all that, why can you not say that back? And if you're putting conditions on it, why do you feel that that's the way that you need to be? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that goes back to judgment.
Yeah.
Like, so what I really saw within myself is that I was very judgmental for a really big portion of my life, especially in my 20s. It's like I knew everything, so I judged everyone for everything.
The wonderful 20s.
Yeah, the know-it-all 20s. But then I realized when I started releasing that judgment, and I don't know if I started with other people or myself first, but there is a link between it, that when I stopped judging myself, I also stopped judging other people. Or if I stopped judging other people, I stopped judging myself so much also. And that's when acceptance comes in, when you stop the judgment.
Yeah. So one of the things that, when we had our chat, was that it seemed like I was not putting the weight of myself behind the things that I wanted. How do you recommend someone get or build up that confidence or that trust in themselves to fulfill that want that they're after?
Well, are you saying, like, use you as an example?
Yep.
So was there judgment beforehand of, like,
a little bit? So, like, for me, I know that I've struggled with worrying that the world will view what I want to do as silly, and so being afraid to put that out there as, this is what I want to do. So, like a podcast, putting out there that, like, hey, I want to put my time and my effort and trust in this project, and saying that to the world is hard. It took me a while to build that trust in myself and my ideas to set forth and do it.
Right.
Is that something that you felt with coaching? Is that something that you see in a lot of people when you talk to them?
Yeah, and that is judgment, because you are afraid of the judgment you'll receive of people thinking that you're silly, right? And of course, and I've had that as a coach, and it'll still keep coming up at different times with different scenarios. Yeah. Because we are focused so much on what other people think. And what it really boils down to, I think, is who's saying it, right? So whose judgment are you really thinking about? Is it the world, or are there certain people that you really have in mind that you think are judging you? Because you weigh, like, if the world came, the world's not going to see you, first of all. Like,
yes.
Maybe at some point, but right now, the world's not going to see you yet. So whose judgment are you really focused on that's stopping you from doing something? Because I had that too, and there were specific people I had in mind of, what will this person think when I put this post out?
The fun part about that thought process is you realize you're thinking about people who don't matter anymore.
Correct.
And it's, you're full of revelations. And I promise this is not a coaching session, but I feel like a lot of what you have to say is very important. And it's good for people to hear it and understand why, if they're struggling with it, they can also get help.
Right.
And it can be help that doesn't come with judgment. It doesn't come with,
there's no judgment,
any kind of expectation of them, other than just working through what it is.
Yeah, and discovering what you want, because it's about you. No offense, like, I care what you do with your life, and I don't care. Because it's your life to live.
Yep.
Like, I don't have any control, and I don't want to have any control over what that looks like for you.
Yes.
However, I care because I want you to be able to do whatever it is you want to do with your life. So while I care and I don't care, I feel like that's the most helpful thing I can do.
I agree, and I think it's a very weighty piece of advice. Just to find someone, whether it's you through coaching or someone else in your life who like has that motivation for you. Is there any final words of advice or, you know, what have you, that you think that you would like to impart on anybody that overarches what we've talked about or what you're feeling about that?
Yeah, I think it all ends up going back to personal ownership. And the same way I say, like, I care and I don't care, you have all the answers to your life. You don't have the answers to my life, and I'll never assume that you do. However, I might ask for help and advice, but that doesn't mean that I need to take it because it's going to apply. The same way that I expect that from, like, my clients, you have the answer. My job is to pull that out from you because you might just not be willing to ask yourself the right questions to get the answer. And that goes for everyone. So I don't assume that I have all the answers for your life. That's not, to me, that's not what coaching is, and that's not what you should be looking for in a coach. If you're just looking for somebody to determine what you should do with your life, then I don't know, you shouldn't be seeing a coach, you should be seeing a psychiatrist or something. But taking ownership, like you really understanding and believing that you have all the answers and that you are in control of your own life. I would say that's the biggest thing. Once you really know that, you do start to make decisions for yourself. And you can take people into consideration. So you're in a relationship, you know, with your family and things like that, but they should never determine what you end up doing with your life.
I think that's a really important thing to let sink home. And I'm very, very happy that you agreed to come on here and talk to me and whoever decides to listen. Thank you so much, Danielle. I'm very, very happy to have you as my first recording guest.
Thank you. I'm so happy.
You make a very safe space for experimenting on this little idea.
Good. I'm so happy to hear that. And that's something that my clients tell me all the time. So I would love to be able to convey that even more. And I love that I was your first.
Yeah, right? Now you can say all of that. When this goes crazy, you'll be like, but I did first. And so, Danielle, I'm trying to start a tradition of ending each episode with a release into the universe. And my favorite way of doing it is a howl. Are you willing to howl to the skies?
Absolutely, because the wolf is one of my spirit animals.
All right, ready?
Ready.
1, 2, 3. Thank you. For more information on where to find Danielle and book a session, and for the link to check out her confidence workbook, check the show notes. Thanks for joining in our circle. Mr. Girl Cult is a bi-monthly podcast. The rest of the time, we're out running with the wolves. Until next time, stay magic.